Well, we're now joined by the County Assessor, Jacob Tate. Jacob, very nice to see you. Thank you for coming in. Now, we did have a chance to interview you a couple of weeks ago when the people's bills, or not actually the bills, the assessments started arriving through their mailboxes, and the reaction was enormous. I mean, for people, things just exploded. People are very, very concerned about the rates that have increased this year. How do you arrive at how you valued property for each particular individual?
Sure. So the process is simple, in that we analyze sales that are considered arm's length transactions, meaning there's no duress or need to sell, like there's no family member relationship between the two people, so that it's a transaction that's considered arm's length when it's handled in that manner. So we look over those sales, verify them, and come up with statistical models that help us determine what variables add to value and which ones don't, and then apply those across inventory, location by location, to determine what final values there are. This year we just completed an update to our land model, and so a lot of these increases you're seeing are in land, which we've been consistently low on for a while. And so that's one of the larger increases you're seeing. I think the other part that we have for a lot of people is that our market is still seeming to have high activity and increases to those sales prices up to December 31st, 2024, which is our cutoff date for where we have to stop analyzing sales. So
would it have been any different if you perhaps, I mean, it sounds like you needed to pay a bit of catch-up there because it hadn't happened for a while. Would it have been more beneficial to have staggered perhaps that, or is that simply not an option? So
staggering, or to do a situation where you're doing part of an increase per year, actually creates more problems than not. So if you're in an area where, let's say, your market is more stable or starting to stabilize, and you're being valued at 100% of market, and then your neighbor, or not your neighbor, but someone in a neighboring city is in a high increasing area, and we only do part of the increase, now they're being taxed at under their market, which creates an inequity. You're no longer paying the same rate as somebody else for county services or road or whatever other districts you might be in, even though the benefit measurement is your assessed value of homes in Washington State. So it creates an inequity, and those kind of things are really undesirable, and they're also outside of the purview of the state. Like, it really is that you are required to value all property at 100% of market value across all classes of property. So land property should be valued the same 100% market as a residential property. Residential properties are a lot easier to analyze because there's a lot more sales of those. Land sales, you have a lot more speculation and development concerns that are going on there that we have to also analyze for.
And in some cases, though, the assessment is that some property values you've decided have gone down slightly. But you were telling me earlier that some people actually are not happy about that assessment either. So it seems like a no-win situation in that instance.
It can be. I'm sure everybody's seen the I think it's an old Far Side comic of here's my value according to the assessor, here's my value to my bank lender, and the photo of the house changing over time. When someone is wanting to sell and or get their property appraised, they do want our value to be higher, and we have had situations where people have wondered why it had decreased in value, or wondering if they're losing money, or if something is different on their record. So just as many people that come in to question their value increase, we have people questioning how the value is generated and what components base their value. So when you're looking at a single property appraisal, they'll often list, or they should be listing, like your bedroom count, your bathroom count. Whereas for us, we're looking at the number of fixtures in your house and the number of corners. Those are all indicators of value that you wouldn't typically be counting yourself. But they fall into statistical measures that show them very, very relevant for evaluation. Plumbing fixtures is a good example. A bathroom with just a tub, shower, toilet, and sink is 4 fixtures, but if you had a double sink, now it's 5. That's a slightly better bathroom than the 4-bedroom one, or the 4-fixture one, sorry. So we take all those kind of things into account and trying to come up with value because the valuation is the denominator in that equation. It is the means by which value or tax is spread. Many, many years ago, it was the number of cattle you owned. And then for buildings, it was the number of windows you had. And some taxpayers decided to get around that by bricking up their windows. In some municipalities, it's your square footage as it ties to the ground, which is why you have homes that extend outside that on the second floor. So there's been all kinds of things that have been done to use to determine valuation, and Washington State uses market value as of a specific date and time for their denominator in the equation.
Now, people have been writing in, this is why we organised this roundtable today. People who are on fixed income seem to be the most concerned because, of course, their value is increasing potentially because of market value, but of course their income remains exactly the same. We also had one gentleman who wrote in that I mentioned with Amanda McKinney when I was talking to her earlier, whose wife is unwell. They are really struggling right now. What options are available for everybody who really believes, that looks at this, says, I can't pay this?
So first off, your assessment is not a bill. It is the measurement of which we disperse taxes. So that's the first thing that you have to look at there. I do not have the ability to generate tax. It's just impossible. I can show that to anybody that like to see, and we have that information on our website as well. So like a good example is a district asking for $3.5 million. If they're legally authorized to get that, and they can only get 1% more each year, if I froze the values, the amount of tax would still be the same. Right. But it does create inequities when you freeze values, because you have this market condition that some people, their home may be more desirable this year and not as desirable the next year. But that said, there are a number of exemptions that exist. There is senior citizen exemption and disabled persons exemption that also applies to people who have a VA disability or disability through the VA. And in their application, we go over their income and see if they qualify. And these are programs delineated by the state. But if they qualify for this program, they can get a significantly reduced tax bill, which also freezes their assessment so that there's no increased assessed values no longer impact their ability to pay or their tax bill.
And is that frozen indefinitely?
Indefinitely for that senior. And it's a forgiven tax. So it's not in 4 years if you sell that you have to pay it back or any of those kind of things. There is another class of exemption which is a deferral. Deferral is the state pays your taxes, but they also put a lien on your property. And it also has those same income requirements. That lien comes with, I believe, a 1% per month interest clause and some other requirements for your home. I personally don't think it's a good fit for most taxpayers. It's not a great program, but if you have no other options, it does exist. So we recommend people apply for them. They're exemptions, they're forgiven. It doesn't change how much your school district gets, your fire district. They still get all the legally authorized funds they're supposed to get, and the exemption exists for that. Well, it exists for a third reason, actually. In many states, property tax throughout the country is kind of described as a three-legged stool. You have your income tax, sales tax, and property tax. We don't have an income tax. We're trying to balance on a two-legged stool right now.
Right, that's a good point.
And income tax typically have benefits or clauses for senior citizens and disabled persons. So they pay less in income tax. Well, since we don't have an income tax, we have no ability to do that kind of equalizing. And so that's where these property tax exemptions come in.
Now, what is the process for somebody who needs to get an exemption? How do they go about that? Is it through the website? Can they call your office?
Currently, they come into the office.
Okay.
When we talk about our ability, we have software that's 30 years old that we maintain for our exemptions and stuff like that. We use much more modern software to do our evaluations, but for our exemptions, we're not there yet. We're hoping to get there very soon with the new software that we're going into and designing and working with. But right now, you can come into the courthouse. You would bring your income tax return for the last several years, along with the supporting documents like your 1099s, your SSA statements, any W-2s you have, so that we make sure we have everything to determine that you fit the qualifications the state has established for that exemption. It's pretty painless. It takes about 10 minutes to do as long as we have everything. And there are conditions or situations that are unique where you have to look at it a little more closely. But in general, you can get an answer to saving $1,000 in 20 minutes. And like I said, it is a program that absolutely should be checked out if you believe you qualify. And if you don't know for sure, it's also still worth finding out. If you don't qualify, every 3 years we adjust that income at the state level, so more and more people will be able to qualify for that program.
And do they need to make an appointment, or they can just come down?
Just coming down to the courthouse. And if coming into the courthouse is something you can't do, you can email documents. As a caveat there are problems that come along with emailing documents because every document we receive is a public record. Okay. We don't retain those documents in our office, but they are in our email. They would normally and almost always be not subject to public records requests, but you do have that issue that exists when you're dealing with public entities. So, and if that if that second option isn't available, have them call our office. We can try and make time to come see the person if necessary, or go to their community like we have done in Sunnyside to encourage people to apply locally.
Well, Jacob, this has been very, very helpful. Thank you very much. I mean, I think it'd be very useful for our viewers who are still having a little bit of sticker shock with the way things increased this year. But you're right, that at this point it's not actually a tax bill or a tax demand, it's really just the assessment.
Yes.
And thank you for explaining the process. And thank you also for explaining how people can apply for an exemption. And hopefully many of our viewers will.
I hope to hear from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, nice to meet you, Jacob. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Cheers.